Hello and welcome back all of you. Welcome to Edukemy's YouTube channel. My name is Harsh. In this video, we shall discuss the feature news for today, which is on if fundamental rights and fundamental duties complement each other and if fundamental duties must be made mandatory or not. Hi Amlan, Hima, Netra, Babani, Ashish, Kriti, Tyasha. Welcome all of you. All right. So let's begin this conversation to understand more about the present state of affairs regarding fundamental duties. There has been a petition in the Supreme Court, and they have asked if the center wants to or could look at making fundamental duties enforceable in the country, right? So let's understand the concept first and then enter in the details later. Too quick, didn't give you the opportunity to talk about Taiwan. Hi Kim, good evening. So let's look at what happens. As a matter of fact, there are some duties that we do by ourselves. Is it not that we in our Indian culture touch the feet of our parents? We absolutely do. Is it not that at times in some families we are said, if we have dirty the clothes, we have to wash it. If we have used the utensils, we got to wash it. It's our duty to wash it. Similarly, it's a duty in our schools to participate in the morning prayer. It's a duty. It's a duty that the children must be sent to schools. It's the duty of a citizen to do certain activities at home. Absolutely true. And when it is the duty for a person to do these kind of activities at home, should it not be the duty to indulge in some activities at national place also? Yes. So just like we follow duties at our homes, there have to be duties in public space as well. That's absolutely true. But look at what happens in usual scenario at places, right? Do we dirty? Absolutely, we dirty the beaches. We don't know where we are throwing food in plastic. Are there people who get into destruction of the nature? Absolutely, that also happens in our country. Vandalism or destruction of public property, that also happens in our country. You can very well see in the images. And soiling of national symbols, national indications, institutions, yes, that too is a part of what happens in our country. This is not that I am only criticizing, I am saying that this is one aspect of India which gets reflected through our daily life, and we see this in news. In fact, all of them, not doing all of them is a part of our duty. It's a part of our duty, just like we treat everything in a very religious way at our homes. This nation is our also home, right? And what ideally should happen is something like this. We should be respecting the national flag, the national institutions, right? We should be cherishing the goals of our freedom struggle, whether it be socialist movements or looking at the freedom of our own country or the progressive values, right? Similarly, we should be looking at having the composite culture and the heritage of India all preserved, respecting the national monuments, not getting into conversations which lead to gossip and later on anything that is fake news. In fact, rendering national service when called upon to do so. Example is territorial army. Indicators are MS Dhoni and people like Sachin Tendulkar, right? These are the part of national duties. And this has been rightly mentioned in the constitution. The fundamental duties, these are one of the most essential part of the constitution. A part mentioned in part 4A, a part of article 51A. They were introduced in the constitution by the 42nd constitutional amendment, and this was done in the year 1976 on the recommendation of Sardar Swaran Singh committee. The committee mentioned certain specific duties. They are not just these, they were different, and they also recommended that they must be made penal offense by the parliament if they are not followed. But then penalty was removed, but then these duties were introduced in the constitution in a new section part 4A and article 51A. If you look at the duties, in fact, one must memorize all the duties even by numbers. The first one says to abide by the constitution and respect the ideals and institutions, the national flag and the national anthem. We have to abide by the constitution, we have to respect these ideals and institutions of the constitution, national flag and national anthem. The second is to cherish and to follow noble ideals which inspired the national struggle for freedom. Third is to protect sovereignty, unity and integrity of India, to defend country and render national service when called upon to do so. See, each of them have found some mention or the other in directive principles of state policy, DPSP. They would have found mention in some fundamental rights also. They would have found some mention in some laws created by the parliament as well, or the state legislature. Let's look at it. So what I want to say is that fundamental duties cannot be looked in isolation, that I am being asked to do something. They are the parts of the same coin looked the other side. If we complete our duties, our rights are not away from being fulfilled. If we are able to pursue what is required, then our rights will also be fulfilled, right? So what comes as a right is a matter of duty for somebody else. For example, if I have the right to clean environment, somebody must clean it. Why the government? Why cannot people clean their own houses? And the so somebody told me, if we clean the front of our own houses, this is just the front of our own houses, it will lead to, and if everybody does that, we will not need a municipal corporation, because everybody is cleaning the front of their houses, right? So our duty will become somebody else's right, somebody else's right will become somebody else's duty, right? So this is complementary in nature. When you look at abiding by the constitution and respecting the ideals and institutions, this is only to ensure that we follow the principles of patriotism, we follow our national symbols, abide by the constitution. This preserves what? The governance structure that we have. This gives the value of patriotism. This somehow enables taxation. Government is able to carry out the defense, communication, trade, all of these measures for all of us, right? Giving us a peaceful way of existence in our country. To cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired national freedom. Now, this might not have found direct mention at many places, but this comes as a reminder to many people. इसीलिए आजादी मिली थी क्या? This is the reason that we got freedom, that you are able to do all this these days. No. So when you look at these kind of issues, right, when we are way away from our track, then somebody reminds us that this is not what the freedom was guaranteed for to us, right? To uphold the protect and sovereignty of unity of the country. Now this is also attached to defense when called upon to do so. Territorial army is a good example of it. To promote harmony, spirit of brotherhood. Now, if you look in the modern context, these are the times when we see a lot of fake news, a lot of disinformation spreading, and there are acts made by the parliament, IT Act, Telegraph Act, all of them, right, under which people can be also penalized if they do not spread brotherhood, if they if there are practices which are derogatory to the dignity of women, they can also be jailed. So we've got some legislations that these are not followed. Though the direct enforcement of fundamental duties is not possible, yet we see a parallel of these duties present in our structure already, right? I'm preparing a base for an argument here. Whenever you look at preserving the rich heritage of composite culture, have we not seen archaeological survey of India clearly mentioning that destruction to the archaeological properties will lead to offense? Absolutely. To protect and improve the natural environment, Biodiversity Act, Forest Act, Air Act, Water Act, Wildlife Preservation Act, all of them preserve the natural environment, including forest, lakes, rivers, wildlife, compassion of living creatures. Scientific temperament, humanism, of course, these are some things that are not being, there's no calculation for these, but then they're a part of the modern value culture. To safeguard public property and abjure violence, in case we indulge in vandalism, then there are certain sections of the IPC and certain act which will be applicable to us. So these fundamental duties have been complemented through some or the other laws, right, each of them. And then when we look at the last duty which was added by 86th amendment to the Constitution 2002, 2002. This speaks of giving the opportunity to child 6 to 14 years of age to be able to study in school. 6 to 14, mandatory education. Now, this has been given as a right also in Article 21A. Isn't it true? And at the same amendment, they also amended this part of the constitution, making it a duty for a parent to send their children to schools, right? So these are the 11 duties. You must remember them. They do come in the examination. If that is a duty, you know, they'll have 4 options. They'll have 4 options and you have to tick which one is not a duty. And they might place in some small component. For example, cooperative movements in India must be you know, encouraged. Is it a duty? Oh no, that is not a duty. That was a part of fundamental directive principles of state policy, right? So but then is it also not true that while we want to pursue duties, we see that duties are also related to our culture? Absolutely. So if I want to show you through what I mean, let me point out. There are some duties that are a part of our culture. There are some duties that are a part of the legal nature of our polity. There are some duties that we follow because of our society. There are some duties that are very personal to us, personal to each of us. And it is possible that all of them are in sync with each other. But then this is also possible that what our culture follows, our society might not encourage it. Or what our society encourages, the legal nature has not at all endorsed it right now. Let me give you some examples. Simple examples. When we look at poor people in our nation begging, asking for money, and some of them crippled, they are not able to serve themselves well. There are times when we feel too much for them and we want to work for them. Although this is an offense to even help anybody, you know, becoming a part of this institution of beggars, but yet our moral, our personal values, our moral values ask us to become, you know, a complicit, not a complicit, but then complicit to crime, I was saying. But then, you know, to help, to aid people, our personal values. There are societal values in our, you know, in our society. For example, our culture promotes system of dowry. Although it is an offense, but this is a part of culture. People also consider this as a duty. That's what I want to say. People consider this as a personal duty to be able to help the poor people. People consider it as a duty to save for their children for marriage times, right? And then there are times when we see, you know, legalities. For example, there was a time when sati was a rampant culture, but it was opposed by people. It was opposed by Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and legality helped, you know, removal of this kind of culture. So there are various aspects of society: personal values, cultural values, right? And then we have legal norms, and then there are societal values as well, right? For example, yesterday itself we discussed the issue of marital rape, and should it become a criminal offense or not? Now, society has a different point, right? It is preserved, it can be preserved, and this is different from the individual perspective of human right activists. They say no, it must be brought to light, but then our polity is not accepting it, our parliament is not accepting it, a sphere of cultural, you know, life is not accepting it, although individuals might be accepting it. So point I'm mentioning here is that duties must fulfill all of these requirements, right? Personal, cultural, social, and legal, right? And this is how they are well accepted. Even if it is not accepted well, it might not be accepted as a full-fledged duty by people, right? So examples of this is this image itself. People might have accepted India to be their country, but they don't know how to respect the national flag. This has not become a part of personal value. Even if it has become a part of personal value, people go scot-free when they get into these kind of, they don't abjure violence. So, you know, when they are not caught, they go scot-free. They feel that it's a right to even get into these kind of activities. People, as a matter of culture, India's culture, we destroy nature. See this? So when we look at duty is not only being able to do what is required for the country to develop patriotism, it is also social culture, legal culture, and societal culture. All of them are taken together. Now, this is where you must look at one of the important nature of fundamental duties. Should it be made mandatory or not? Many of the countries are looking at developing its citizens, because human resources are the most valuable resources. And if they keep seeking rights, who is the one who's to provide rights? It is they themselves providing rights, providing duties to others, and in turn getting their rights. John F. Kennedy had rightly said, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. Rights and duties are the two sides of the same coin. Similarly, there are many other beautiful sayings. For example, rights are the result of performance of duty. Many of the scriptures also mention, just keep performing your actions and you will see the results will be there for you to achieve, for you to reap, right? Follow your rights, follow your duties, and rights are not far to achieve. We have surpassed those days when individuals would be subjects and there would be people who would be the rulers. We are ourselves the people who are running the country, and if we perform our duties, the country will also rise with time. So these 11 important duties which have been mentioned, it is not much to be asked, but then keep making this mandatory. Should it be a law or not? We've also already seen that these are a part of some of the other laws and penal provisions already. So if you look at the logic of making them penal directly, probably the logic doesn't serve that way, but yes, making people aware that these duties are something that will help you preserve your own right, this is most important, right? So our fundamental duty section was inspired by USSR's constitution, and they also mentioned fundamental duties as important. They are non-enforceable, right? But they can also be used by the court to interpret some other sections. For example, if the person has not performed an important duty, the court can look at how to look at that particular issue. But they are not enforced in their own selves, but they can be read to understand and interpret what should be the course of a judgment. All right, they serve as the guiding light to people. A little of sacrifice, a little of working for the others through fundamental duties, and it serves the purpose of India growing ahead, right? And when this fundamental duty was introduced in the constitution, India was going through a stage of turmoil. This was the year of 1976. Remember, these are the times of emergency, national emergency imposed in the country, and there were forced sterilizations. There was multiple issue. For example, there was poverty, there was unemployment, people were raging against the government. There was a movement by the ex-prime minister, Garibi Hatao, right, movement, and even then people were looking at vandalism of property. There were jail bharu andolans happening during those times. So eventually emergency was imposed, and then there was a mandate that if people want to deserve their rights, they must fulfill some obligations and duties. This is the context in which duties became a part of the constitution, right? So when we look at many duties, for example, one of the duties mentions that we must preserve the biodiversity of the country. We see this in laws even before duties were introduced. Wildlife Protection Act 1972 was put as a part of the constitution before 1976, right? Similarly, many acts and other provisions were put as a part of the constitution or as a part of a law which was created through the constitution itself. Not so you could quote Sardar Swaran Singh committee, and by the way, this committee went on a little too strict, saying that they must be made penal offenses if the duties are not followed. But you could also look at the law commission. The law commission report always mentions that build awareness amongst people so that they understand that their duties are mandatory for development of the nation, for patriotism, so that their rights are well preserved by themselves. Similarly, Justice Verma committee, the same Mr. Justice Verma who also ruled on 2012 Nirbhaya cases, right? So he also was a part of one of the committees, and then he was the chairperson of the committee on making these fundamental duties mandatory. So their recommendation was also such that some of the duties should be looked at being made more important, right? So this is the reason that we should look at rights and duties existing together. All right. Even rights, every right. For example, we've got the right to liberty, right to freedom, Article 19. There are reasonable restrictions on that particular right also. And this is what could be also treated as the duty. If we got the right to speak anything, There are some reasonable restrictions. We cannot speak offensive against the dignity of a woman. We cannot outrage the modesty of any other person. We cannot speak against friendly relations with other countries. We cannot speak anything which causes social rift amongst people. So there are reasonable restrictions, and this is what is our duty. So duty cannot be looked in isolation. Duties are a part of our own rights, as simple as that, right? And when we look at relevance of fundamental duties in India's democracy, you can very well see, if duties will be followed, rights will not be far to achieve for any of us. All right, let me see if you people have mentioned something here. Okay. Hi Abhinav, welcome. Lost soul. So I read somewhere that patriarchy harms the emotional development of men. This is linked to farmer suicide, all right? Because the pressure to be a man in a patriarchal society is so much that the man feels he's a loser, all right? Yes, see, there is a concept of masculinity and femininity. I would like to explain in short. My father has got more feminine traits than masculine traits, and my mother has got masculine traits more than feminine traits. The qualities, the inherent traits, for example, feminine traits are humility, being able to support, empathy. Masculine traits are being courageous, and both have got their side effects also. For example, masculine traits can lead to arrogance. Feminine traits can lead to servile behavior, and both of them have got their good things also. Both of these traits must exist in every human being, and that is how we become more balanced. Mind has also got two sides. One is creative and the other one is logical. The creative side is the one which is more towards feminine. The logical side is the one which is more towards masculine, right? So yes, for largely for all the human beings, if both the qualities are not balanced, they can balance it through more awareness. Nice point put. Abhinav says, why is daily gazette so bulky? Isn't fruitful to read it daily? I believe, or alleviate my fears. Someone, okay. Why is daily gazette so bulky? Isn't really viable to read and make notes daily? Yes, Abhinav, be a part of this series and we will try to sort things. There are some people who have been really diligent with this, so be a part. It's not a one-day affair that will be able to master it, but maybe if you dedicate a couple of hours every day for a month, I think you will be on the other side of this fence. So nothing to worry, just be a little patient. If you can be a part of the series, we would love to have you, and would love to ensure that the problems, they vanish, they will get sublimed. Yeah, see, Kriti says, start jotting down along with the, see, there are people, and each of them, Kriti, Bhavani, each of them, all these people, we all have faced these problems. I myself have faced these problems that you're talking of, Abhinav, and we've tried to devise a solution, and it is working for people. It is actually working. All right. Okay. Abhinav, taken your point. Thank you. So getting back to the feature news here, uh, is the relevance of the fundamental duties. So what we have placed in the feature news today is what the fundamental duties are. So a part of the Constitution placed under the 42nd Amendment, not originally introduced in the Constitution. And do remember, in 96th Amendment, in the 42nd Amendment of 1976, there were other two parts also put in the preamble. What were they? What were the two words put? Could you please type it down, friends, here? Do remember the name of the committee, Swaran Singh Committee, because this is asked in pre-examination. Was it a part of the Constitution? Which committee? And then also do remember the important committee, that is Justice Verma Committee, which has its own, just keep quoting Law Commission, saying that awareness is important. To spread awareness is more important. And I already mentioned to you how the fundamental duties are very much complemented through the Indian laws, right? So directly calling them as something that can be enforced is only futile. All right. Scope of fundamental duties. All right. The feature of fundamental duties, both moral and civic duties. Start looking at them from the perspective of personal moral duties, social obligations, part of our culture, which we must grow with, and a part of legal sanctions as well. And only when all of them are met, any law becomes successful, and so will fundamental duties and fundamental rights also, right? So in isolation, they are not enforceable, but when asked, you must say that it's a part of our moral culture. It's a part of what we have been taught in our, in our society. It's a part of India growing together. It's our dream, and it's also a part of legal, legalities. So in a democracy, is duty important? That is the question. If you are asked, is duty important or freedom more important? What is your answer? You should be ready for a question like this. Should we seek our rights or should we perform our duties? Which is the one which should be given more prominence? All right. So why were they introduced? During these emergency times, we have placed the reason that you people also mentioned, a part of USSR constitution, we took it from them. Not a lot of countries have placed duties very high. In fact, there are some constitutions where there is no duty. There are many of them. Not only that, if you look at American constitution, they place humongous value on rights, individual rights. But then for developing economies which want to thrust a lot of weight on economic development, social development, performing duties becomes very essential. Arguments for enforcement of fundamental duties, responsible citizenship, absolutely. Rights and duties are interrelated. Always mention this point. Non-observance of duties can lead to obstruction of rights of others. Give examples of fundamental rights itself. And what is the reason for placing reasonable restrictions in these rights? So when we have got the right to prosper our religion, there are also laws against forceful conversions. When we got the right to preserve the autonomy of our language, we cannot impose our language on the others, right? So you can start looking at complementary nature of rights and duties both. Arguments against enforcement of fundamental duties. They are not imposed, in many of the countries' constitution. It has also been found that if you want to impose duties, it has been found lately that there's been increased conversation in the parliament about making duties enforceable. It has been found that when there's a tendency in any polity to do this, it becomes a little more authoritarian. Now, as I showed to you very clearly that we already have duties and a complementary law to it, then probably we need not enforce these duties separately, right? So fundamental duties, after all the scrutiny and examination have been subjected to, they deserve a fair share of appreciation. Absolutely, right? In nation building, the longest constitution, a part was introduced which was not a part of the constitution previously, yet becomes very relevant, right? Because fundamental duties and directive principles of state policy and rights, they are all essence. They provide the essence of the constitution. While rights are what we seek, what we want, we must perform some duties. And similarly, there are duties for the state as well. No, directive principles of state policy. If you're not able to give rights to people right now, at least consider it as state's duty to provide them rights later. And slowly and steadily, those directives get converted into fundamental rights. That's true. That's true. Where there was a time when it was a directive for the state to be able to provide free education to children. It was later converted into fundamental right. What about inferred rights in the Article 21? All of the rights, getting available to people only because our polity is growing with time. But then considering duty also becomes important. We cannot always be seeking rights and asking the state to keep performing, because we ourselves are a part of that polity. Critically analyze the need for enforceability of fundamental duties. Critically analyze the need for enforcing fundamental duties. And when you look at enforcing the fundamental duties, you will have to remember these 11 of them. This is a must. Remembering all the fundamental duties, remembering all the parts of the directive principles and the bare act of the fundamental rights, this is prime. You might have a couple of or 2-3 questions from this straight. So please do that. Right, let me look at the questions you people have posted here. Socialist and secular. All right, thank you. Integrity as well. Thank you. Thank you, all of you here. Internal disturbance. Okay, that was removed. That was introduced. All right, yes. Thank you. Thank you, all of you here. Without rights, we cannot perform our duty. Pooja, I think you've been mentioning the exact opposite. Without duties, without the availability of duties, we cannot be performing our rights, we cannot be getting our rights as well. That's the other one. Okay, Pooja says rights are the first. Okay, all right, all right. But then Pooja, along with this, you will have to give your arguments why rights should be first deserved and then duties must follow. On the other hand, if we follow duties, our own karma, rights are not far to achieve. This is another way. And you can quote scriptures here. All the religious scriptures, all the spiritual scriptures say the same thing. Vivek says duties complement our collective enjoyment of rights. Abhinav says a highly probable question this year would be on this topic, as your PM, our PM, has been talking about it recently. Good job, sir. Thank you, Abhinav. Remembering fundamental duties and DPSP really help in concluding answers. You can pepper them anywhere. Yes, yes, totally depends. Abhinav, be a part of the series so that we are able to understand you better and then, accordingly serve each other. There are a lot of us, people ask questions and we respond to it. And slowly and steadily, it can become all refined. Current affairs will be simplified. We will all help you grow through this, right? And you will also help the whole system grow. So be a part of it. All of you, if you like this initiative, share some love through likes, comments, and shares. And today is Friday. We will meet again Monday evening. Abhinav, we start with answer writing on some important questions of the day. And then we start the first video. The first video is on current affairs, which includes gazette detailing also. And along with that, some other articles taken in or some excerpts of gazette or current affairs taken alongside. And this is the featured news discussion. So this is it. Kanupriya says, sir, in some answers, negative part is much higher. How to balance it out? Both are correlated. Okay, you all agree that both are correlated. Good to know. But which one should be given the priority? That is an important question. Kanupriya says, in some answers, negative part is much higher. Kanupriya, it totally depends on what context you're speaking. So if you give the example, we will be able to turn it around, right? So give the example that you're speaking of. Till the time, I will take the example of vandalism. If you see vandalism happening, what is the negative part here? This is negative in itself. It must not happen. So look at the way economy gets impacted. What is the culture that we prosper for the next generation? What is the impact on governance process, right? There is increased policing, everything, giving services to people, availability of services to people and giving them commodities, all of it gets delayed. Give me an example of negativity that you say and how to look at it. Internal disturbance. All right. Internal disturbance was related to it was the context in which the emergency was initiated in India, right? So I'm still waiting. Kanupriya, can you tell me one? Bye bye and good night, everybody. Kanupriya, you give an example in the offline comments. I will get back on this. Right. Till then, good night, all of you. Good night, Pooja, Astha, Vivek, Netra, Hima, Amlan, Kriti, Kanupriya, Vivek, all of you. Good night, Abhinav. I will see you all Monday evening, but then Saturday is the day when you revise all of these lectures. If you missed out on something, do the note making, revise that, and then we will see you Monday evening. Okay. Okay, Kanupriya, it's her thing put here. When it comes to problems in social culture, yes, I acknowledge what you're saying, Kanupriya. We saw this yesterday only, the problem in social culture. It is not accepted when we look at the problems of dowry, when we look at the problems of marital rape, right? When we look at acquisition of property for women, right? Property. So many other rights not given to females. I do get it. What about marginalized sections, right? So 2 to 3% of India's population, which is Divyangjan, are they treated well? No, are completely unjustified. So yes, the culture needs to change, and this is the reason we need to perform our fundamental duties. Should we not place more duties then, right, in fundamental duties, right? We must. So you see, preserving the women integrity, abjuring violence is a part of it, but then it is very vague to mention it, and that is the reason that there are certain rights which have been very, very clearly mentioned for these people, for the marginalized communities, so that their rights are preserved well. All right. Yes. internal disturbance was removed and armed rebellion was put in, so that no prime minister is able to, just on the name of internal disturbance, have this emergency initiated. Also many other things, for example, approval of the cabinet, it should not be a straight sentence by the prime minister. A lot of vagueness were removed. All right, so bye bye and good night. I will see you all. Thank you for participation. Yes, Kanupriya, one last point. Looking at the kind of issues that we have in our country, for specific cultural issues, we will have to be sensitive and we have to talk in that regard only. These are only general statements. All the fundamental duties that we speak of here, the 11 of them and coverage of them, this is only general nature. But when we look at specific issues, protecting the dignity of women or making our society more equitable, egalitarian, then we will have to deal with each of the issue there separately, right? So this is what we do in the feature news. One by one, we'll deal with them. So yes, we have to be sensitive. You are accurate there. Abhinav says, quite comprehensive. I saw the video on conjugal rights and bookmarked it. Welcome, Abhinav. Be a part of it. We will all deal with it. All right. Thank you for this appreciation. And this is why we simplify the gazette here, no? And there is a rationale why we place such a big document there. The rationale is that if you are a newcomer, you would be able to understand it. If you are an expert, you would be able to skim through it as well. But then everybody should be able to understand the article in totality. And this video is not only about gazette, current affairs in general. So be a part of it. Thank you for this participation. We'll see you Monday.